that meets the eye. Otherwise, why would churches have exorcists?
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Right.
I once hypnotized a person who was having trouble. She says, you know, she doesn't feel like she's herself. And she was from up in Sangre Grande. And I called forth the energy, and the energy come. And it turned out to be a man who had been involved in a uprising in a place called Sangre Chiquito outside Sangre Grande. I checked it and found it was right.
Little bloody.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And he said that he got involved in killing. He was a slave. And when they shot him, he didn't feel that he was worthy to go anywhere. So he kept jumping from body to body for the last couple hundred years.
Right.
So when we opened the light for him to go, he turned around and he apologized to the woman who he was possessing. He says, I was only doing it out of my fear. And now that I know the way, I am sorry, and I shall go to my resting place.
Right. So a lot of these...
Even I and all was surprised.
So basically I don't want to say the ineptitude or the lack of knowledge that the people who occupy the office of priest now possess is responsible for a lot of these spiritual unrest that exist in the world today.
Of course.
All right.
And because they're ignorant of it, they don't even know that that is their real purpose. When you go and you put yourself between you and the congregation, you are making yourself responsible for a lot of charting the people so that they don't go through a lot of that trauma and keep a certain level of togetherness. Without that kind of spirituality and that kind of door, the society falls apart.
Right. So the priest really has a responsibility to ensure.
And not to get up in church on a Sunday morning, right? I gathered with the last set of floods they had.
Yeah.
They have one of these fellas that have this big church, and he just get up and they ask him, they say, well, take in some people who are homeless, you know.
Yeah.
And he refused.
Yeah.
The church still filling up.
Yeah.
So you say, maybe the universe threw that at him just to see how he would move.
Yeah. To expose him
for
who he really is.
No, well, the exposition will come by his choice of what he decides to do.
Yeah. Give him an opportunity to show who he really is.
Yes, and he did.
Yeah.
But his church is still full. People
Because
they go there and they feel nice. They get them all the right words. And
well, I think a lot of churchgoers, they go to church because it is expected.
to dress up and feel nice.
It looks good on their resume. They feel when they reach by St. Peter. Well, I had full attendance record. I was never late. I stayed for the whole service. I did what was asked. I didn't cause no trouble.
Listen. My mother was in an old people home up the road, right? So I go one Sunday to visit her, and all ambient people, the people who can walk, were sitting in the living room, and everybody was reading. Do you know what everybody was reading?
Of course, the Bible.
They were reading the Bible. So I, being in my mischievous mood, I said, I see everybody's reading the holy book. I said, only making some pips to make sure all you get in, you know. And nobody laughed. Everybody was very angry. And I says, come on, lighten up.
You call them out there.
Laugh, you know. But that's the whole thing, right? It was me sitting down there reading, and somebody turned around and looked at it and said, so what do you mean to say, if I read another chapter, I get some more points?
Well, you know, some people...
It's like long ago when the Catholic Church used to sell indulgences.
Yeah.
You know, you go and you come into the city, you go down the road, give me a $5 indulgence.
Yeah.
It was like a lotto.
Yeah.
Right? That's what Martin Luther and them kicked up against.
Yeah. Because you can't be paying for opportunity to be sinful.
So the people who have money could get his sins rubbed out easier. Anyhow, look how we digressed from.
No, be on topic, you know. Be on topic. All of this falls under the umbrella of the obfuscation because a lot of people do not understand.
Well, you see, if you do not understand your roots, and your roots is your ancestry, the strength that you draw from your ancestry,
Yes.
right? The strength that you draw from the symbols in your spirituality,
That's right.
the strength that you draw, because if your symbol of God is not a representative of you,
Yes.
then you can't draw no strength from that.
Because if the God you are worshiping does not have anything in common with you, you automatically feel unworthy.
Yes.
You feel like you have to be more like him, or more like the image that is placed in your mind
Yes.
to become godlike.
So you have to stop.
So
You have to stop
in
and
your
ask.
natural state, you can't be godly.
You have to stop and ask, who placed that there,
Yeah.
and why? What is the
Yeah,
purpose?
yeah, yeah.
Right?
So it maintains that kind of slavery.
Yes.
Yeah, obeisance. That when I see somebody like that, I have to reverence them
The-
because
The old Baptist people understood some of the rules.
yeah.
I remember going to a Thanksgiving, and I'm standing on the step with my spiritual mother. I used to get along well with her. And a whole lot of children playing in the yard, right? And the guy comes out on the patio and he says, "Ice cream!" Right? And the whole yard went up in a row, and everybody rushed in and sit down to eat ice cream. And mother said to me, she said, "Today is going to be a very blessed day." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, if I had a bunch of old fogies outside there, they'd amble across and they'd sit down. I'm going to tell the other one, I hope you ain't do chocolate, you know, I don't like chocolate.
Yeah.
And me, I don't like strawberry, I hope you have coconut."
Yeah.
And then when they come, "How is ice cream so hard? They couldn't soften it."
Completely.
She says the angels getting the wrong food at that point. Right? You see, when children go in, it's just shared joy,
Right.
which is the whole purpose of the Thanksgiving.
Make a joyful noise unto the Lord.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, we're still staying in this trend, you know, because I think I had a patient a couple of weeks ago, and she had arthritis. So she's taking all these powerful painkillers, which is mashing up her liver, getting her indigestion. She can't sleep properly, and all kinds of things. And I said to her, "There's something that works better than all of that." And she says, "What is that?" I said, "Turmeric." I said, "So if you go," and I sat down and I wrote it out. So you get half a pound of turmeric, 2 ounces of ginger, right? And you blend them up. Then you fry them in coconut oil for about 3 or 4 minutes, sprinkling black pepper in it, let it cool, put it in a bottle, put it in the fridge, and 2 or 3 times for the day, you take a spoonful of it and you make tea. I said, and if you want to be really nice, put a little coconut milk in it.
I was just about to ask that because I know it had to be like for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the lyophilized is frying it in the coconut oil,
Right.
right? So she listens, she writes down, and then she looks at it and she says, "I can't buy this in pills."
Well, you know, there is a problem with today's society.
Oh, God. And I said to her, I says,
Yeah.
"Pills is not as good as that. Pills dried out. You don't know who made it. You don't know what they fry it in. The person mightn't know they might fry it in hydrogenated oil, which will mess you up even more."
Exactly.
Right? I said, "And I'm telling you something to rid your pain, and all you want is some pills."
Because all the studying is the amount of work involved in preparing it.
But how much work?
No,
You just wipe it off with a little rough thing and put it in the blender and blend it up. It will take, what, 15, 20 minutes?
I grew up with the older people in my family, especially the women. They're always in the kitchen making something, food, medicine, always making something.
So-
and
so
they
it
had all these bottles on a shelf that they could one pull a bottle and give you. Take that.
It reminded me of
Yeah.
something somebody said.
Yeah.
I have a friend who I taught in acupuncture college,
Yeah.
and she's from Jamaica. And she likes to go and find out stuff. So she came to me one day and she says, "I'm going to Cuba. I'm going to see how the hospitals operate. I have an invite to go down there, you know." So she go home to Jamaica and then take a flight and go to Cuba, right? And the Cubans had a thing where they didn't used to stamp your passport because the Americans would get all crazy. So she comes back and she tells me, she said, "Boy, it was absolutely fantastic." She said, "They don't have enough medicine." So she said, outside the hospital and the back, have a big herb garden. She said, and when the doctors finish, they go outside there, they send somebody outside there eating it, and they pick the herbs, and they mix it together, and they give it to the thing and say, boil that and drink it. You know. She says, and they were getting good results, so she come back with a whole lot of remedies and things like that. And I say, necessity is the mother of invention. And you look at what is going on now in the world, and you see, if there was a world war in the morning, we in pain. My mother wouldn't be in pain. She'd run up in the back and say, okay, you have a headache, I'm going to give you this. You have this, I'm going to give you that. Right? So we have detached ourselves from the reality around us. Our doctors have also detached themselves from the reality around them.
Yeah, but you know, in spiritual Baptist, we have a lot of spiritual healers.
Right.
And sometimes they're brought under fire because they use herbs and these kind of things. That is the Western doctors will tell you herbs don't work.
That is symbols that they tell you when half the drugs that you, 3/4 of the drugs that you take in, trying to mimic herbs. And mimic them improperly.
Synthetic vision.
Right? I'm reading a report out of Standard Process. They make natural medicine. And the guy says, ascorbic acid is only one little aspect of vitamin C. That when you take ascorbic acid into your body, the body then has to go and look for spare cofactors all over the body to put it with the ascorbic acid to make real vitamin C.
That's right.
So he says, this product that I'm selling you is real vitamin C. It has this, that, put in it, this, put in it. They all freeze dried, so it didn't destroy the thing, and we put it together. So when you take this vitamin C, you need much less than if you was taking ascorbic acid. Same thing with the vitamin Bs.
So instead of 1,000 mg, you probably need about 200 or 100.
Less than that, 50, 10. You know, because it's a whole different slant to what is going on.
But you can use it more effectively.
Now, it's very interesting that you should, that you say that, and you have doctors who say, oh, herbs don't work. And the very magazines that they have stuff. We take out one here on turmeric, right? What it's good for. I have another article there on turmeric for Alzheimer's and how to make it more potent. And we're talking about scientific investigation that makes it more potent.
But I think in the last 20 years, they have opened their eyes and gone into that kind of research more. But they're still only scratching the surface.
Listen, the first statin drug that you had was Lipitor. Right? Lipitor is a derivative from Chinese red yeast rice.
Yes.
The Chinese, 600 years ago, 800 years ago, recognized that you could have too much fats in your blood, which would interfere with the circulation and things like that.
That means they had a way of knowing that you had too much fats in your blood.
They had a way of knowing if you had diabetes too. Right? You want to know what was the way? They cultivate ants' nests. And they'd take a little bit of your urine and they'd go outside and they'd throw it by the ant's nest. And they'd have plenty of sugar. You know, what do you think would happen?
The ants would come.
The ants would rush out to try and get up the sugar to carry it inside. Okay, so they were treating diabetes 600 years ago and saying, we now discover it. I have books with it written 600 years ago that have treatment for that, and the herbs that would bring it down. Of course, it was very much rarer than now. You understand? So, you say, here we have this thing where you then say who it is that fed the symbols to doctors to tell them that herbs don't work.
The
pharmaceutical company. But does the pharmaceuticals work? That's the problem.
That is.
Does the pharmaceuticals cure something, or does it keep you hanging all the time, using it for the rest of your life?
Drug dependency.
Drug dependency. So you have to get all these, you know, all these bits and pieces together to begin to understand. So anyhow, going back, when I said that to the woman, and she said, "Can I get it in a pills?" I just busted out laughing, you know, right? So I'm continuing because one of the things is as life goes along, you see more and more. For instance, turmeric, or as we call it here, saffron, which is the wrong name, or curcumin, if you look at the scientific name, is the only thing that is known, that and ginger, that by and large, that melts the plaque in the brain that they suspect plays a part in Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Right? So if you take it and you take it for a long time, it will do that. Coconut oil is the one thing that will supply energy to the brain, bypassing the insulin problem that you have in the brain as the brain gets older, which is another thing we could describe. So you say, okay, so you're going to take the turmeric, but when you take the turmeric, it thins the blood, it helps with all kinds of problems, women's problems with periods and all kinds of things, and blood clots and things like that. It's a herb that has a wide range of uses. So we're looking at it where it thins the blood and it cleans the plaque out of the brain, right? And then they say, this is how you do it. You need to get it absorbed, so you have to, as you said just now, lyophilize it. So you have to take it and fry it in coconut oil, or fry it in ghee, or fry it in butter. It has to be a saturated
When
fat.
we say butter, we're not talking about Blue Band Magic.
No, that is not butter. That is
Plastic.
thoroughly hydrogenated trans fats that will kill you quietly.
Plastic. Yeah.
Plastic.
Yeah.
Right? And so you say, all right. So you get this and you do that. Okay? And then they say, so I bump along. And I come upon an article by Dr. Bruce West that he then took off, you know, from companies that are doing research. Right? And he says, Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, pain, and the amazing curcumin breakthrough.
Okay.
Right? Finally, in what can only be heralded as a major breakthrough, we now have an effective treatment for people trying to prevent or treat Alzheimer's, dementia, and memory loss.
Right.
Now, the problem with curcumin or turmeric is that when you take it, it has trouble being absorbed in the gut. So they found out that one of the ways of improving that is to tie it to oil. When you tie it to oil, it gets absorbed easier. So you get like 100 times more than you would get normally. So that was settled. So we get it into the blood. The other thing was to get it across the blood-brain barrier. And lyophilizing it didn't help that much getting it across the blood-brain barrier. Game changer. The researchers in the latest study produced a curcumin supplement called TerraCurmin in a nanoparticle form. The curcumin is ground extremely fine into minute particles. So that means if you're going to do your curcumin, the thing to do would be to buy a grinder and grind it into a fine, fine powder. Right? It turns out that the new form of curcumin was absorbed, and are you ready? All the patients getting the nanoparticle curcumin had improved memories at 18 months. And that's not all. Patients with Alzheimer's have a particular type of amyloid plaque in their brain. The patients getting the activated curcumin actually had less amyloid plaque in specific parts of their brain that correlated with Alzheimer's disease. In other words, the plaque got removed. This is a game changer. If curcumin did nothing more than keep patients from getting worse, this study would have been a smashing success. The fact is that it actually improved the Alzheimer's. Okay? So he says, he goes along, and he says, good. Curcumin has been heralded as the queen of all herbs. There's a doctor writing it, a Western doctor. I would also add that this study that was not tainted by the pharmaceutical industry influence because no drugs were being tested. It was straightforward, and for the first time, look into the account how supplements are not well absorbed. And then activating the raw ingredients, in this case, curcumin, made all the difference. So the first thing they did is they grind it very, very fine to make sure they get through. So he says, the problem was that there's a company that experiments with this, and he says the active phytonutrient and phytochemicals for over 8 years. After much work with their Australian counterparts, they were able to create curcuminoid galactomanosides Basically, they took the fiber from the seeds of the fenugreek plant and impregnated this plant material with the curcumin from the turmeric.
Okay.
Right? So they ground up the fenugreek and they, in the blood in much higher quantities, had a longer half-life, time for healing, and more easily crosses membranes and infiltrates the tissues in your body. What was the membrane? It went across the blood-brain barrier.
Okay.
So that when they checked it, up to 200 or 300 times more curcumin got into the brain to be able to free up. Right? So, it says, the new activated curcumin product, turmeric forte, was rigidly tested using double-blind studies. The results were as follows. Depending on the dose, turmeric forte increased bioavailability use of the body of free curcuminoids, the active form, was 24.6 times at a lower dose to 45.6 times at a higher dose. So what they're saying is that you got 26 more times curcumin into the system, and if you use a higher dose, 46 times more. So you got really large. The turmeric forte had a 3 times longer half-life in the body. The concentration of free curcuminoids in the body were well above the threshold for key pharmaceutical activities. These levels were never reached by other unenhanced curcumin products. Turmeric forte was the only product that showed a strong bioavailability or uplift combined with the preservation of free curcumin levels in the body. Turmeric forte passes through the blood-brain barrier. The studies proved that there was increased distribution of free curcumin to the heart, the liver, the kidney, the spleen, and in particular to the brain. Levels of free curcumin in the brain were 245 times more than the unenhanced curcumin. So suddenly you had something that you could shove into the brain that clean up the plaque, open the circulation, right? Free up the whole bioavailability.
But
go ahead.
The turmeric forte is a product that they made?
Yes, they
just for the study?
No, they're making it. They could buy it.
You could buy it now.
But here the fun. It's turmeric and fenugreek.
Fenugreek is?
Methi.
Right.
What the Indians put in the curry. They put fenugreek in the curry. Gives it a particular taste. You could buy it in the grocery in 1 pound packages or 5 pound packages. You could buy it as a powder. You could buy it whole.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The scientists now discover what they multiplied not so long ago?
I didn't want to tell you that. I wanted you to tell me. That people who have been eating curry all their life,
with the little fenugreek,
with putting fenugreek and curcumin into the curry as part of the spices, had less problems with Alzheimer's and dementia. In fact, they almost didn't have any.
But
that is how they found out, because they had certain places in India where Alzheimer's and dementia is almost non-existent.
But I am about to say that I never hear about Alzheimer's until I hit my 40s.
All right.
I hear people talking about Alzheimer's because I grew up with nobody having Alzheimer's or even diabetes. 1 or 2 people had sugar. Right? They had sugar, and everybody wanted to know, well, what this person do to get sugar? How they get sugar? Where they get that from? Yeah?
Listen.
Yeah.
Turmeric forte relieves occupational stress, fatigue, and anxiety. Makes your arteries more pliable with improved circulation. These are the benefits. Eh?
Yeah.
Relieve osteoarthritis. Dramatic reduction in pain scores in 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Curcumin is the premier anti-inflammatory herb. I did a chat, I think it was last year, to the Westmoreland Garden group. And I went down, and sometimes they invite me down, I go down and we chat on the subject. And this time when I went down, I said, look, I'm not chatting on any subject. I will stand and you all ask me questions on what bothering you. And we will take each one and we'll pull it apart, and then we'll pull what you could do to fix it. Right? So that was great. Now the audience was mainly women, right? But they had this big guy sitting at the back. And I said big. You must understand. He was real big. And he was sitting next to this little petite Indian lady.